So I just want to start off by saying that what we're going to discuss in this video, I want you guys to keep in mind this is my opinion. Okay, I know we're going to be talking about Horizon Forbidden West, and I know that a lot of people really love this game, but as you can tell from the title and the thumbnail, this game didn't blow me away. And there's a couple of reasons for this, and we're going to discuss this, but I just want you guys to know that this is my opinion. You are allowed to like whatever you want to like, okay? But I just need to talk about this. This has to be discussed because there are some legitimate issues here with this game that it keeps me away from fully enjoying this game. So with that being said, grab some popcorn, whatever. Put me in the background, listen to me rant a little bit. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you guys are new. We're going to talk about some Horizon Forbidden West and why it's a good game, but it's not a great game. So first things first, I want to mention positives before we go into negatives here. Because while this game, to me, it's a good game, it doesn't really do anything spectacular. So on the positive side of things, it does vastly improve the combat. There's a lot of things in the combat that I really enjoyed, more so than the first game. And I'm glad that they made some improvements, specifically on the melee combat. Melee seems to be a little bit more fluid, because in the first game, it was just your light attack and your heavy attack, and then that was it. This one, it feels better because there's more combos and there's more things you can do with the melee aspect of this game. So I'm very, very happy that they made those improvements. Other improvements that they made where in the first game, it was tied to your skill tree. So say, for example, when you jump into the air and you're aiming, time kind of slows down a little bit. In the first game, in Zero Dawn, that was tied to your skill tree. That wasn't a skill that Aloy had from the very beginning. It was so when they made this game, when they designed this game, it almost feels like it is a continuation from where we left off with Aloy, as it should be. So all the skills that she learned in the first game follow through to the second game, even though there's no like save data transfer or anything like that. And so I'm okay with that. I mean, we do start back at level 1, which is fine. I mean, it's a new game, whatever. That's fine. It's not a big deal. That's how pretty much almost all games are when it comes to sequels. But having some of the mechanics from the first game that were linked to the skill tree transfer over and are now kind of like a permanent thing for Aloy, I really like that. That is a good gameplay design feature because it shows improvement from the character from the first game to the second game. That's like... So say you're playing God of War, right? And Kratos is all built up at the end of the game. You play the next game and you start at the very beginning. That's basically what they do in every Metroid game. So in every Metroid game, you beat through the game, and at the very end you're also overpowered and everything, and in the very next game they strip you of everything. They strip you of your armor, your weapons. You're back to basic Samus with your basic gun or your basic shooter and pea shooter, whatever. Like, they take everything away. This game doesn't do that, and I'm very, very happy that it doesn't do that. It breaks the mold when it comes to that, and I praise them for that. The other thing too is the skill tree mechanic, where in the first game I think skill trees were linked to, I think it was like 3. It's been a minute since I played the game. It was linked to 3 different skill trees. This one has a lot more skill trees to it, which, again, I like because it adds to more versatility to the game. The other thing that I like in this game, too, is the way that quests reward you. In the first game, doing quests didn't really have any sort of impact. Like, you did a quest, okay, cool, you get a couple of items and that's it. This one, you do a quest and it rewards you in skill points. So now it's actually beneficial for you to go and seek out all the side quests to complete them so you can go ahead and power yourself up via the skill tree, which is a fantastic mechanic. The skill tree itself, all the skill trees are done very nicely. Again, I'm going to praise that skill tree 100% because it is a fantastic thing. The other thing, too, I'm so glad that they made improvements in the weapons and in the armor. So now we can actually improve weapons and armor, where in the first game you craft your weapon, you craft your armor, and that's it. You can go ahead and attach weaves to it, and that's it. You're done. The only modifications you make in the first game are through the weaves. In this game, modifications to the weapons and armor are done by leveling up the weapons and armor. When you level them up, you unlock different abilities on that armor or weapons, and you can unlock extra slots for your weaves. So I really like that they have that mechanic in there. It's a very, very welcome change to that system. Other things that I do like is the way that the quest system is done. It's done a little bit better. Not that it was bad in the first game, but there were some things that I didn't like that kind of like bothered me a little bit. This one does it better. I still would like to be able to track multiple quests at one time. That's a criticism I had of the first game. That is a criticism I have here. I don't know why they refuse to let us track multiple quests. If MMOs can do it, going all the way back to World of Warcraft, and I think even RuneScape, why can't these modern games let us track more than one quest at a time? I just don't understand this. This is a weird thing that they need to change in open world games. And the reason why is because if you're questing, if you're doing all the side quests, it's easier to track your path of, okay, so I have these side quests. These side quests are kind of close to each other. I'm going to go ahead and knock them both out one next to the other without having to go to my menu to check to see if there's another quest that's close by. Yeah, I know that in the quest menu, it tells you how far from your location the quests are, and that's fine, but I want to be able to track multiple quests at one time, like 3 or 4 quests at one time, so I don't have to go into my menu to be able to see how far away these quests are and go to the next quest. That's a pet peeve of mine just in general for games as a whole. Like I would like to be able to track multiple quests. Now I guess I'm going into what I don't like. But really quick, back to what I do like. I mean, voice acting is stellar. Just like in the first game, voice acting was done very, very well. Character models are weird in this game. I don't know what it is, but like every character model looks the same, just with a different face. A perfect example of this is if you look in the very beginning of the game, once you first enter the Forbidden West, and right before you enter the Forbidden West, I forgot the name of the town area, but the town area that's right before the gates where this big battle breaks out. All the characters in that area look identical. Like I don't know. They're just like all their body types are exactly the same. They're all like heavy set. Like a lot of the majority people in Forbidden West are all heavy set people. Not that I don't have a problem with heavy set people. That's not my complaint. My complaint is there's a lack of variety in the NPC characters. And you can tell, especially like on their faces and stuff, like you can see that very little work went into the actual NPC characters, like as far as the side characters go, that are just like in the background, or the characters that give you the quests and stuff like that. Where main characters, such as Varl and some of the other main characters, they look fantastic, the way that their character designs are. So I guess it's just kind of nitpicking a little bit there, but I mean, you're talking about a next-gen game. I played it on my PS5, and this was a thing that I very much so noticed on my PS5. The other thing too is, speaking of PS5, fidelity mode is garbage. Absolutely garbage. I don't know what it is that they keep on doing this thing in games where fidelity mode it has ray tracing and it's at 30 FPS, and the 30 FPS is garbage. Like, it's not even smooth 30 FPS. It's like, so say for example, you play games on your PS4. A lot of games on the PS4 were locked to 30 FPS. If you didn't know that, you know that now. And a good example of that is Last of Us Part 2. Last of Us Part 2, not now because they didn't update in Last of Us Part 2. So if you're playing Last of Us Part 2 on your PS4 Pro, there was an update. It plays at 60 FPS. But if you have a base model PS4, it's still 30 FPS. But anyways, when Last of Us Part 2 first came out, it was 30 FPS. And you couldn't really tell the way that the gameplay moved and everything, the characters moved. You couldn't tell that it was 30 FPS because of the nature of the game. The game was kind of like not a slow-paced game, but movement was more realistic, and there wasn't any crazy fast movements. So when you have those kind of slower, realistic movements, 30 FPS doesn't really bother you. It's not that big a deal. It's usually when you get to faster movements in games that are very high speed, where you start noticing that that 30 FPS starts to kind of lack, and it looks like it's slowing down, and it almost looks like there's some screen tearing and stuttering going on. That's what happens in Forbidden West if you put it on fidelity mode. If you put it on fidelity mode at 30 FPS with ray tracing and it's 1080p, it's not native 4K, it's 1080p. Again, if you didn't know that, you know that now. It just doesn't look good. It screen tears, it stutters, it looks like garbage. Absolute garbage. Now, if you're just standing still, yeah, it looks good. Looks great. Like the water looks crystal clear. Yeah, you're not moving. Everything looks fine. The trees and everything. But the minute that you start moving your camera, oh my God, it is bad. It is really, really bad. And that's, again, not even specific to this game. That is an issue with everything when it comes to next gen or new gen, current gen, PS5 era. Right? Like, we got to get away from this 30 FPS with ray tracing thing for fidelity mode. It is not good. A good example of it done right is Spider-Man Remastered and Spider-Man Miles Morales, where when it first came out, it had 30 FPS ray tracing, and again, it was garbage. It still had that stuttering issue, or it looked like it stutters and skips frames and all that stuff. But they then updated the games and added a 60 FPS with ray tracing mode. And so they call it performance with ray tracing. And in order to get the performance with ray tracing, they reduced a couple of the NPCs that are in the environment. They reduced particle effects, so like the snow and things of that nature. So in reducing that, they were able to save some resources to then get that 60 FPS target, and it is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous to play Spider-Man Miles Morales specifically, because Spider-Man Remastered looks good. Don't get me wrong. It looks really good in 60 FPS with ray tracing. But that game was not made for PS5, where Spider-Man Miles Morales was made for the PS5. And that game looks phenomenal with 60 FPS and ray tracing. So if they can do that with Spider-Man Miles Morales, and I know it's two different companies, but they're still Sony companies, right? Because Sony owns Insomniac Games. Sony owns what is it, Santa Monica Studios or whatever it is who developed Forbidden West. I don't remember off the top of my head, to be honest with you. Doesn't matter. They're both Sony companies. So if one studio can do it, maybe they should seek help from that studio who was able to do it. And the reason why I say that is because it's not uncommon for studios to work together on different games. For example, and again, a lot of people don't realize this, but Sucker Punch, the team behind Ghost of Tsushima, actually assisted in developing Last of Us Part 2 when it came to the animals. They helped out with the way that the horse movements worked, the way that the animals would react in the backgrounds and things like that. And that's because that was something they were already working on to get right for Ghost of Tsushima. And on the other side, the team behind Last of Us, so Naughty Dog, actually helped Sucker Punch with Ghost of Tsushima with their motion capture work to get everything right, and so that way they can go ahead and map facial features and have it look as good as the game does. If it wasn't for Naughty Dog, Ghost of Tsushima wouldn't look as good as it does. If it wasn't for Sucker Punch, Last of Us Part 2, the horses and the animals and all that wouldn't be as realistic as they were. So if companies like that can work together, I don't see why the other studios can't go to Insomniac Games and be like, hey, how did you guys get it to be 60 FPS with ray tracing? We want to be able to do that. How can we apply that to our game? That's something that I want to see moving forward, just as a whole, right? Not just Horizon Forbidden West. That's more a critique on gaming as a whole. Anyways, I digress. Let's go to the things that really bother me. Like, really, really bother me. The game can be a little boring. Now, the first game had this problem too. The action sequences are great, and the action sequences in the first game were fantastic as well. But when it came to the slow parts with the story building and the conversations and things like that, the dialogue goes on forever. And it's not even like good dialogue like Fallout, right? So like if you play Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4, the dialogue in those games have some wittiness to them sometimes. Depending on the characters, depending on your reactions and your own decisions, characters react differently with you. They might be snarky, they might banter with you, they might have a witty response, they might shun you. They're like, this game, and this was a criticism I had of the first game, and it's the same criticism I have for this game, your choices don't matter. Like, it gives you choices on dialogue, and your choices don't matter. They don't change anything with the way that the game moves, the way that the game progresses, with the dialogue, the way that it goes. And yeah, maybe it'll change like one line from what Aloy says, because you have a compassion response, you have a firm response, you have a kind of like a smart response. Like, yeah, okay, it might change like one line, but that doesn't mean that it's actually changing anything about the dialogue as a whole. And so the dialogue just kind of drags and drags and drags for maybe like 10, 15 minutes at a time. And I find myself like wanting to just skip the dialogue because I just don't care for it at that point when it just goes on so long. So I don't know if this is something that games have been doing for a while now, where like they have to tell this huge massive story, right? And so in doing so, you have long segments of dialogue, and some games do it better than others. You know, like I mentioned, Fallout 3, New Vegas, Fallout 4, Outer Worlds, they all do it in a way that is fun and engaging because your decisions matter. Other games like Last of Us Part 2, the dialogue sequences and all that play like a movie. You don't have to talk, you don't have to make decisions or nothing. They play like a movie. You put your controller down and you can watch the cutscene. And I like that too. I grew up in that era where we watch cutscenes. We don't have to stick around for quick time events or anything like that. You just put your controller down. It's kind of a little break, kind of a reward for meeting your goal, and you get to watch a little cutscene. And I'm okay with that because they're not overly long either. Like the cutscenes, they feel just right. They feel like, you know, it's a good progression. It comes at the right time. It's not like all the time where Forbidden West does it all the time. Unless you're out in the wild and you're just exploring and killing machines and all that stuff. Then that's different. Then, of course, you're not meeting any dialogue unless you run into a side quest. And then your side quest has a whole bunch of dialogue to it. And look, I get world building. I get it. I love when games go deep into lore. Don't get me wrong. I do. That's one of the things that I love about like the Resident Evil series, for example, is because it goes deep into lore, but the lore isn't told to you. And that's, I think, one of the things about it. It's more of like a thing where in Forbidden West and Zero Dawn too, where the lore is told to you and it's not fully like, how can I put this, like discoverable, right? So like you have to sit there and listen to the characters talk to you, and then it'll give you like a dialogue option that you click on, and it's kind of like the dialogue option reminds me of like if you're watching a series on Netflix or something and you're just like binge watching the series, and then Netflix is like, oh, hello, are you still there? Are you still watching? And it kind of interrupts your binge watching, and you're like, yeah, I'm still watching it. So then you have to click the button. That's what the dialogue in Forbidden West reminds me of. It reminds me of binge watching a Netflix series, and then they interrupt you with, oh, are you still awake? Are you still here watching this? And that's all the decision that you make in that dialogue is like, oh yeah, I'm still, so like you click on an Aloy's like, uh-huh. And then that's her response. It bothers me. It bothers me because it leads to my next point that Aloy is kind of boring. And don't get me wrong here. I love the voice actor for Aloy. I really, really, really do. Like, I love Ashley Birch so freaking much. She is in some of my favorite games, and like I will never criticize her voice acting because she does an amazing job with everything that she's given. The problem here is in Aloy's writing as a character. Aloy in this game is just boring. And you know what? Like in the first game, Aloy was still kind of boring as well. But what made her interesting in the first game was finding out who Aloy was. It was really like the whole backstory of Aloy and the way that she discovered things. But in this game, she's just blah. The side characters are absolutely amazing, just like they were in the first game. But again, this is supposed to be Aloy. That's like, oh man, how can I put this? It's like you have Last of Us, right? You play the first Last of Us, and imagine if Joel was like just some boring guy. Like if they wrote him to be very monotone and very just kind of blah the entire time, it would suck. It would absolutely suck. And that's kind of what they did with Aloy here. And I really, it bothers me a lot because I want to enjoy this game and I want to enjoy Ashley's voice acting, but it makes it difficult to enjoy that when the character is written in a way that's boring. Like, to give a perfect example of Ashley Birch at like some of her best work, Parvati from The Outer Worlds. Oh my god, Parvati, best girl. I love Parvati. And in The Outer Worlds, I played that game through 4 times. Okay? And every single time, Parvati was always on my team. Every single time. And if she ever got knocked out or anything, I would unload hell on the entire map if she got knocked out. Because Parvati, freaking best girl, and Ashley Birch kills it as Parvati. And it's so unfortunate that Aloy is just so boring in this game. Because Ashley can do so much with her voice acting. And it bothers me. It really, really does. Really, really does. Oh. Anyways. With that in mind, like, to me, it feels like they just played it safe with this game. Like, they could have done so much more, and they could have improved so much more from the first game, but instead, it's just more of the first game with a couple of tweaks. And while that can work, because there's been a lot of games where that kind of change works in a very, very good way. And I'm not even going to take that away from sequels, because the last thing you want is for them to completely change things up. You know, a good example of the original game and the sequel is a massive improvement, even with minor tweaks, is the first Resident Evil and the second Resident Evil. Like the original ones that released on PS1. It was such a massive improvement from the first one to the second one, with everything, with voice acting, with gameplay mechanics, with the weapons, with the story design, with set pieces, with what they were able to do with the hardware, like, and with the character models. Everything was a massive improvement over the first one, and all they really did was just tweak some of the original mechanics, and it worked out so well. In this game, though, it is detrimental to it. Instead of it playing on a very positive note, it plays it more so just very safe. You know, like, another thing I'm tired of in all of these kind of games is having a weapon wheel. Can we get away from that? Like, Spider-Man does it, and that's a criticism I have in that. Was Evil Within 2, or Evil Within 1 and 2, both have weapon wheels, and I hate them. And the reason why I hate them is because it's distracting from the game. It takes away from immersion. It's very immersion breaking when a weapon wheel pops up in the middle of your freaking face, and you have to pick which weapon you want to choose. And yes, I know that time slows down while you're in your weapon wheel and all that stuff, but I don't like that mechanic. I don't think it's a good mechanic. I think they need to get away from that and find other things that work better. And shooters, honestly, shooters do it well, right? So they map their weapons to like the D-pad. So you cycle through your weapons using the D-pad. Resident Evil games, same thing. You cycle through the weapons on your D-pad. That works really well. And I think if they adapted that kind of mechanic into these games, it would be less immersion breaking, and we could enjoy the game without having to be like, oh yeah, let me go and frantically go through the weapon wheel while time slowed down so I can pick my weapon. Oh, look, I'm getting hit even in slow motion because I don't know which weapon I'm picking. Oh, I need to craft more ammo in this weapon wheel now because I ran out of ammo for my weapon. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's things like that just kind of bother me, and I want to be immersed in this game, not get taken away from that immersion when I'm invested into this game. Other than that, the game is fine, but it's not, to me, it's not what I set my expectations to, and I think that is another problem, is that I set my expectations too high for this game, and I feel like a lot of people probably did as well, but with good reason, because Horizon Zero Dawn was such a good game, and unfortunately and fortunately for me, I didn't play it when it first released. I have kind of this stigma where, like, if somebody's telling me, oh, I need to play this game, this game is really, really good, play this game, I won't play it. I don't play it. I don't know why I do that. It's something I do subconsciously. You know, everybody hypes up a game, and I guess one of the reasons why I do it is because when the hype is so high up, if I play the game, I set myself up for disappointment. That happened to me with a lot of games. Silent Hill 2, for example, is a good example of a game that I feel like if I didn't get so hyped up for it when I played it, I wouldn't have been disappointed with the game. And unfortunately, you know, this past year, Silent Hill 2, that was the first time I played the game, first time I beat the game, but everybody hyped it up so much that it's the best Silent Hill game. I played it and I was like, the game's meh. It's really not as good as everybody thinks it is. Especially when you break it down. I'll go ahead and link that video if you want to watch that one after this one, which I highly suggest you watch that one. That one's actually a very personal video because we go really deep into a lot of things with that, with the game and in my own personal life. So if you want to learn more about myself, go watch that video. But overall, like, this game, I feel like they just could have done more. And with the expectations set so high for everything, it doesn't feel good to play this game. I get kind of bored. I'm honestly, I can't play the game for more than 2-3 hours at a time because I get bored. Where the first game, I did streams on the first game for like 7 to 9 hours at a time because of how much I enjoyed that first game. And that's a testament to how much you enjoy a game or not. You know, like, if I kind of feel like I have to force myself to play it, that means I'm not enjoying the game. And maybe I need to put it down and come back to it later. And honestly, I think I might do that with Forbidden West. Just because it feels like I shouldn't be playing it right now. But that's it for me. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down below in the comment section. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? I want to know. Let's have that conversation. Keep it civilized. Again, if you disagree, that's okay. If you love the game, that is okay. Thank you for watching. Hit the thumbs up. Subscribe if you guys are new. See you guys in the next video, everybody. Happy gaming.